and welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about is classifying animals. So we'll be talking about, how do we classify animals, looking at the similarities between animals, and just really kind of diving into the different types of animals and the features of them. So I hope that you enjoy this lesson today. So, did you know that biologists have identified more than 1 million different kinds of animals in the world? And every day more and more animals are being added to the list. So when we're classifying them, we're still finding more and learning more about each animal and their groups that they're put into. So biologists usually classify living things based on their similarities. So for example, you have falcons, sparrows, and geese are all classified as birds because they have feathers. Okay. Birds are then further classified by what is different about them. So falcons have sharp claws for catching prey. Sparrows have toes that can grip, and geese have webbed feet because they swim. So you can dive even deeper when you're classifying. So there's 7 levels, and kingdoms represent the highest level, and more organisms are included in the kingdom than any other level. Each kingdom is then divided into groups, and so we'll kind of take a look at that. I'm going to make kind of a little pyramid here, an upside down one. So here we've got the kingdom. Below that, I'll put this, and then below that we have class. I should make these a little bit bigger. Below class we have order, and then below order we have family. Below family we have genus, and then below genus, just right here, we have species. Okay, so that's kind of how we break up animals. So each, species represents a single type of organism. So that's the lowest level of this pyramid that we have for the animals. So every organism is given a scientific name. The scientific name consists of 2 words. So the first word is the genus, and the second word of the organism is the species. So each organism has a unique and different scientific name. Scientific names are Latin, so biologists can recognize them around the world. So what we're going to talk about first is vertebrates, and kind of what makes a vertebrate and what are vertebrates. That's going to kind of help us classify different types of animals. are they? Does anyone have an idea? Okay, yeah, so there's three main features of vertebrates, and one of them is the internal skeleton. So inside the body, and it's made of bone or cartilage. So with an vertebrate, you've got that internal skeleton. Another huge feature of vertebrates are backbones. So they're made up of many small pieces, known as many small pieces, which will make up the backbone. And then also vertebrates have a skull, so it surrounds and protects the brain. So within this, there are, different classes of them, and there's 7 different classes. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that now. So just remember, with vertebrates, we've got an internal skeleton, a backbone, and a skull. So there are 7 classes. Of vertebrates. And so we've got fish, and we're going to have type 1. So I'm going to just put a little 1 there. We have fish type 2. And we have fish type 3. Okay. And then we also have amphibians. And then amphibians, we've got reptiles. And we have mammals. Okay, so we're going to take a look at each one of these classes, okay? And we're going to really dive into what makes each class, okay? So the first one we're going to take a look at is fish type 1. Oh, and I forgot one. There's also birds is another type that I didn't include in there. So the first type that we're going to talk about today is fish. Okay. So biologists have identified about 24,000 different species of fish. So there are more species of fish than any other kind of vertebrate. The fish group is broken into 3 different types, so type 1, type 2, and type 3. So we're going to talk about type 1, and that's the bony fish. Okay, and a little bit about the bony fish. So, all fish live in water and breathe with the structure called gills. Bony fish have scales that overlap, kind of like roof shingles. Many bony fish have an organ called a swim bladder that is filled with gas. This allows the fish to move up and down. So some examples of bony fish. Just a little bullet there. So some examples would be trout, bass, and tuna. So the next type of fish is type 2. And these are cartilage fish. And so cartilage fish are different than bony fish because these fish have skeletons made of hard rubber-like material known as cartilage. They do not have any bones. They have tiny tooth-like scales that feel like sandpaper. And these fish have very powerful jaws and rows of sharp teeth. So examples of cartilage fish would be sharks. Also have rays. And also skates. So the next type we're going to talk about is type 3. So we have type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 3 are the jawless fish. Okay. So these fish have no jaws or scales. They also have a skeleton made of cartilage. So an example of this would be the hagfish. I wish I printed down pictures to show you. So those are the 3 main types of fish, okay? So we've got the bony, cartilage, and then the jawless fish. And within each one, they each have kind of different features. So the next type of class that we're going to talk about are the amphibians. And what makes amphibians special? So I want you to take a moment and just think about what you know about amphibians and just kind of think about what you think of when you think of an amphibian. Okay, yeah, so amphibians actually comes from 2 Greek words meaning double life. So what do you think they mean by double life? Where do they live? Yeah, so part of their life is in the water and part of their life is on land. So land and water. Okay. So this includes frogs, toads, salamanders. So they go through metamorphosis. So when you think of frogs, they go from a tadpole to a frog. So they're going through those changes. Adult amphibians breathe with lungs or through their skin. Their skin is usually thin and moist, and that's to keep it from drying out. So in order for it to not dry out, they must stay near water or damp places. Amphibian eggs do not have shells, so they must be laid in water or where the ground is wet. The next class we're going to talk about are reptiles. And so just take a moment and think about what you know about reptiles. What animals do you think of when you hear the word reptiles? Snakes, alligators, okay, crocodiles, turtles. Good. So reptiles, there's about 7,000 species of snakes, lizards, turtles, alligators, and crocodiles. So when we think of reptiles, we think of snakes, lizards, alligators. We think of crocodiles. Think of crocodiles, turtles, and turtles. So some live on land and others live in water. Their skin is usually scaly and watertight. Most of them lay soft shell eggs on land, and all reptiles breathe with their lungs. And dinosaurs were also reptiles. So the next class that we're going to talk about today are birds. So birds, there's almost 9,000 species. Most can fly. The feathers make flight possible by providing lift and kind of streamlining their body. Feathers also will help keep heat in for the birds. Birds also have very hollow bones, which make them very lightweight. All birds breathe with their lungs and have a horn-shaped beak and lay eggs. So just to kind of summarize that, they have feathers. They also horn-shaped beaks. And then also they have hollow bones to keep them light. So just kind of a summary of that. So what we're going to talk about now is another class, so mammals. So I want you to think about mammals and think about, what do you think about when you think of a mammal? Okay, so things with fur, okay. Okay, humans, yes. So there are about 4,000 species that, are mammals. So about 4,000 have mammary glands: bears, elephants, mice, humans, and about 300 species of mammals have young that develop in a pouch. So kangaroo, possum, those are some examples. 2 species of mammals lay eggs, so duck-billed platypus and the spiny anteater. So the 2 species of mammals that lay eggs. So mammals have hair for warmth and most live on land and breathe with lungs. So hair, land, and lungs most. So those are kind of the typical features seen in all mammals. So we talked about vertebrates. Now we're going to talk about invertebrates. So invertebrates, I want you to think about when you hear that, what do you think of? Okay, so you recognize the word vertebrates. Okay, so you think it's without a backbone? Yeah, so it's just any animal that does not have a backbone. So no backbone. So invertebrates make up about 97% of all animal species. So I'm just going to write down some examples of them. Sponges, So those are just some examples. We're going to talk about some of these today, maybe not all of them, but we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about those features. So, first one we're going to talk about today is sponges. So, this is kind of the simplest of all animals. Their bodies consist of 2 layers of cells without any tissues or organs. There's 10,000 species and they all live in water. Water. Sponges use the pores to strain food particles out of water passing through them. If you use a natural bath sponge, you are using the skeleton of a dead sponge. So the next class of invertebrates so this includes jellyfish, corals. So again, there are about 10,000 species of these, and their bodies have a radial symmetry. So body parts are arranged like spokes on a wheel. They have arm-like tentacles with stinging cells, and the tentacles capture small prey and push them into the body to be digested. The next category are flatworms. So flatworms are flat and thin. They have a bilateral symmetry where the right and left halves are the same. There's about 18,000 species. Most are parasites, so they live on another animal. The tapeworm is an example of a flatworm. So we also have roundworms. So roundworms are long. They also have round bodies, hence the word round. So long, round, and they come to a point. So they have bilateral symmetry. There's about 80,000 species. Most are not parasites though. Many live in soil or water. And there's about 150 species that are parasites and live in humans, so like hookworms. They have teeth to attach to tissue. The next type of invertebrate is the segmented worms. So, segmented worms have a body with many sections. They can live in soil, freshwater, or the ocean. There's about 15,000 species of them. And some examples: earthworms, a leech. Those are some examples. So their body parts are So with these, there are more than 100,000 species. There's 3 groups. So within group 1, we have snails and slugs. So they have kind of like coiled shells. Group 2. Within group 2, we have clams, scallops, and then we also have oysters. So with these, their shells are a little bit different than snails. They're more hinged. And then group 3, we have squid and octopuses. So they have tentacles rather than a shell. So the next category that we're going to talk about is arthropods. So with arthropods, this is the largest group of invertebrates. So the bodies are segmented with jointed legs. Most can feel, taste, and smell. They also have external skeletons, which is going to support and protect tissues. Most shed skin, and molting is the process of kind of shedding the external skin. So when you think about these, maybe centipedes, spiders, so just those different kinds of insects. And then the last one that we're going to talk about of invertebrates today are these. There's 7,000 species, and these include sea stars. We also have sea urchins, sand dollars, here's some examples. So they have radial symmetry, and they use 2 feet to move. So those are some of the features. So today we talked about vertebrates and invertebrates, and then we kind of talked about the different types. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson, and I will see you again soon.